This is Real News Media TV, coverage you can trust. Please like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Select all for daily news updates. Suspects held in cops shooting. Swift investigations by the police have led to the detention of 2 suspects in connection with the shooting of a policeman on Tuesday night. Senior Superintendent Christopher Phillips, the commanding officer for the St. Catherine South Division, told the news that the suspects, both males, were picked up on Wednesday. SSP Phillips revealed that one of the suspects was picked up in Kristen Gardens and the other was picked up in Spanish Town, both in St. Catherine. They are being interrogated. The policeman, who is stationed in the St. Catherine South Division, was on his way to work when he was attacked and shot by gunmen traveling on motorcycles. His firearm and a motorbike were also stolen. Reports indicate that a passerby found the injured lawman in bushes on Municipal Boulevard in St. Catherine the following morning. He was taken to hospital where he is being treated. Look out for counterfeit JN managers' checks. Customers of Jamaica National Bank are being urged to be on the lookout for counterfeit managers' check. We have communicated with our members and the public to make them aware of the situation and to urge vigilance when accepting checks within the series 510-09427 and 510-09932, the bank said in an email response to the news. The matter is currently the subject of an ongoing investigation, and therefore we are unable to provide further details on the issue at this time, it added. In the meantime, customers are being asked to contact the bank's member care center about any concerns about the checks received. St. Elizabeth Police ramping up traffic enforcement. The police have vowed to increase their operations targeting black spots in the South Central Parish, even as they themselves face difficulty in apprehending motorcyclists in traffic stops. Corporal Albert Simpson, a sub-officer in charge of the St. Elizabeth Traffic Department, told the news on Tuesday that police have been using different measures to apprehend disobedient motorcyclists who account for 40% of the road fatalities in the parish since the start of this year. Motorcyclists refuse to stop when signaled by the police, so the police have to be coming up with other strategies in order to apprehend them, said Simpson. Motorcycles out there are like a weapon in the rider's hand, so whenever they refuse to stop, police have to come out of the road, he added. He pointed to previous incidents which have resulted in police officers being severely injured and even killed after being mowed down while attempting to stop motorcyclists during spot checks. If you remember, in Westmoreland, a policeman was hit by a motorcycle and he died. His foot was totally severed. He was buried in Manchester, so we have to ensure our safety and the self-preservation, which we call it, is priority, said Simpson. Last month, a police constable's leg was broken after being mowed down by a motorcyclist who failed to comply with a signal to stop in Santa Cruz during an operation with the Transport Authority. We have to ensure that we do our best in apprehending them safely without any injury to the police, said Simpson. Since the start of this year, 5 people have been killed in 5 crashes in St. Elizabeth, which is the same figure when compared to the corresponding period last year. 2 motorcyclists, 2 occupants of private motor vehicles, and a pedestrian have been killed in crashes since the start of the year, said the traffic cop. He identified 3 main roads, Slipe, Crawford, and Goshen, in St. Elizabeth as being prone for accidents. Speeding contributes mostly as a factor in crashes. With our limited resources in terms of motorcycles and personnel, we still will be boosting enforcement. There will be more speed checks and an increase in the seizure of unlicensed motorcycles, he said. Simpson said the parish ended 2021 with 41 road fatalities resulting from 37 crashes. We have vowed not to go above that this year. We are going to try to keep it as minimal as possible. In order to achieve that, we have to enforce. We plan to do joint operations with the certifying officers and the Transport Authority, he added. Darling cites rift between some gun dealers and FLA. Shane Darlin, the chief executive officer of the Firearm Licensing Authority, has said nefarious characters with big stakes in the gun and ammunition business, including some firearm dealers, have been plotting against him and have made numerous attempts to have him ousted from his position. During an FLA press conference on Tuesday, held at the AC Hotel in St. Andrew, Darlin declared that his days of remaining silent about the questionable anti-corrupt activities affecting the FLA were over. Darlin took that stance following recent attacks on his character and reputation as a CEO of the entity by people who he said were of the opinion he is bad for business. Regarding firearm dealers, the FLA CEO said some of them have been resisting the regulations he has put in place, especially ammunition accountability. The FLA boss told the news on Tuesday that there are 17 firearm dealers across Jamaica, with 2 in Kingston, 5 in St. James, and 10 distributed over the other parishes. Darlin shared that in 2017, he implemented a measure that required accountability for every single firearm and ammunition that is sold by a dealer. He said he was taken to court over it. It begs the question whether this is contributing to the very crime problem, where you have criminals with licensed firearms having access to legal rounds of ammunition. It compromises the national security of the country. The dealer stated in his court documents that since we implemented the accountability measures, sales had fallen by 80%. They said persons were unwilling to buy because they would now be required to track and account for every single round of ammunition. There is resistance against the proper documentation and regulation of the sales, especially of ammunition. We have strengthened accountability in ensuring that we meet the importation of firearms and ammunition at the airport. Prior, dealers could take in firearms and ammunition and take them directly to their business place where they were to be checked. What we are doing now is ensuring that a team from the FLA actually meets the firearms at the airport and have them checked off before they are released to the dealers, Darlin said in response to a question from the news on a seeming rift between himself and the dealers. Darlin shared that when he became CEO in June 2017, he noticed clear signs of corruption at the FLA and began implementing measures to curtail those activities. However, some of the checks and the balances he said he brought in were not favorable to many people who were benefiting from an industry that raked in $1.2 billion in a year at one point. During the period 2014 to 2017, where persons were getting gun licenses under questionable circumstances, everybody made money from it. The ranges made money because each time you attend the ranger for training, you had to pay. The dealers made money because they were selling far more firearms and ammunition. In fact, during the period of 1 year, dealers sold $1.2 billion worth of firearms based on the sheer volume of persons getting gun license. The dealership across the country benefited from corrupt practices of the FLA. Based on the restriction and approach being taken now, it has resulted in far less persons getting firearm license, and the board has been quite stringent in its decisions as to who gets a firearm license. That has led to a lowering of the sales and, by extension, the profits. Darlin added that gun dealers and several other persons have launched campaigns to have him stripped of his title as CEO of the private firearm regulating authority. The chairman of the board has lobbied extensively by special interest groups who wanted to force his hands not to review my contract 2 years ago. They have lobbied members of parliament to push the government in that direction. The board has taken a stance to revoke all licenses that were issued under questionable circumstances. It has therefore affected a wide cross-section of the country. Persons who have had firearms for 2 years, they are being revoked. Naturally, it would affect sales, and it affects those individuals who sold them the license in the first place. While I understand the attacks that persons have launched on social media, I am not going to relent in terms of policies that are implemented, Darlin said. He stressed that he will not be shying away from interviews with the media regarding controversial matters at the FLA, and said he is willing to show the public the extent and the nature of several persons with licensed firearms who should not have them. Woman killed at Old Harbor Fishing Village identified. The police are yet to determine a motive for Tuesday's shooting death of a fish vendor at the Old Harbor Fishing Village in St. Catherine. The vendor has been identified as a 52-year-old Patsy Coleman of Rasta Corner in Sandy Bay, Clarendon. Coleman was allegedly shot by a lone gunman who fled the area shortly after. Reports are that Coleman, after using a bathroom at the facility, was pounced upon by the gunman and shot multiple times in the upper body sometime after 1 p.m. She was later pronounced dead. While fleeing the area, men reportedly chased the gunman along the fishing beach, but the culprit fired indiscriminately to stave off any attempts from being captured. He then made good his escape. Investigations are ongoing. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Select all for daily news updates.